Testing. Secure your Elixir apps with Paraxial IO. From code analysis and bot defense to dependency checks, they've got you covered. Elixir first design with GitHub integration. Elevate your security at Paraxial.io. Hey, what's up? I'm Jacob Litzo, your Elixir mentor, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor Podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. Today, I'm excited to welcome Leandro Pereira, a key developer of Beacon CMS. It's a content management system built with Phoenix LiveView. Thank you so much and welcome to the show, Leandro. I really appreciate you being here. You want to just give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about Beacon. And I've been leading the Beacon CMS project for, about 2 years now. And like I said, it's a Phoenix LiveView CMS. And just a bit about myself. I have been to programming well, for some time now, for a few years. And I started with Phoenix, actually Elixir, when Elixir was, in the early days of Elixir. Also started with Phoenix and LiveView in the early days, and have been contributing to, trying to contribute to the community, and now working with Beacon.
That's awesome. Where did you come from? What led you to finding Elixir? If you sound like you're a pretty early adopter of it, where were you before that?
Well, okay, so going back in time, I used to work with Ruby. I did not start with web development. I started with C, C++, and desktop applications back in the day. And then I had some time with PHP and WordPress, which was like, for me, was like the, some wow moment when I discovered PHP and web development, and also WordPress. It was like an, huge innovation for me. I mean, WordPress, whether you like it or not, WordPress was an innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I started working with Ruby. And I'm from Brazil, so when I figured out there was a Brazilian working in the Rails core team, Jose was working on the Rails core team back in the day, and that was kind of the, my interest in Elixir was because of Jose, and and Jose being Brazilian as well. And then when I started learning Elixir, there was another moment that was like, hey, this is special. This is something, this is different, right? Elixir, it looks like Ruby, but it's way different. That was another wow moment for me. And that was when I started, learning about Elixir. And that was in 10 years ago, maybe. It was a long time ago. Elixir was just a baby. And I started using Elixir in a small project, professionally. But this project didn't, this project eventually died. And then I came back to Ruby for a few years. And then I started using, Elixir, Phoenix, and especially Phoenix LiveView in, about 2018 now. So, early days of Phoenix and LiveView. And I have been working with Phoenix and LiveView full time since then.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, I found Elixir and Phoenix LiveView in like 2021, maybe 2020, and I haven't gone back to the JavaScript days yet.
Oh, yeah, you're lucky.
Well, I mean, it's not easy. Like, I just have tried to force myself to have projects in Elixir. So I just, yeah, I don't know if it's the smartest move. It's probably been a harder, more difficult path for me, but Once you start, you kind of get hooked. Like I love just the Elixir ecosystem and syntax. It's fun to write versus just having to write it, right?
Yeah, I do love the syntax, but it was kind of problem for me in the beginning because it felt like Ruby, but it's not
Mm,
Ruby. And the first maybe 1, 2 projects in Elixir was messy. Like was
yeah.
not a good project because I was trying to module like OOP into Elixir, like trying to write Ruby into Elixir because it felt like Ruby, even though it's not Ruby. So I was like, hey, where I write my value objects, where I have like my instance data, my instance state, and that kind of stuff. So it was hard for me to get into the functional programming mindset in the beginning.
Hmm.
But as that clicks for you, it is so much easier. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure. Well, like the functional programming mindset was very difficult for me as well, but I feel like it would be a lot harder if syntax was closer to the language I was coming from. Like if I was a Ruby dev coming in, I could see that being tricky because then you're like, you have your objects, right? And then you don't.
Yeah, yeah. Especially because Elixir was my first experience with functional programming. I don't know if some other people with previous experience with functional programming makes it easier to learn Elixir or not. I'm not sure, but this transition from object-oriented programming to functional programming is sometimes it's hard, and
Yeah.
especially like 10 years ago, we didn't have many materials to learn Elixir back in the day.
Hmm.
Um, Now we have a bunch more, and but for me, like, um, I remember reading the Programming Elixir book and Elixir in Action. You know, huge help to learn Elixir, but we didn't have other
Yeah,
materials.
Sasha's a rock star. That was my first book too, the In Action.
Yes, yes, I remember Programming Elixir. In the beginning of the book, there is like intro to functional programming, like talking about assigns and variables and state. But for me, Elixir in Action the was like the click for me,
Hmm.
especially in the part of the book he talks about process and change servers. That was for me. That was like, hey, now I know how this works. You know, but I spent. But the problem was I remember I spent some time like, okay, I know what a Jinx server is, I know what a process is, but where I'm supposed to use that?
Hmm.
That was the next challenge for me learning Elixir. I was trying to use Jinx servers and process everywhere, and
Yeah.
where I was not
Yeah.
supposed to.
Yeah, just put them everywhere, wherever you want to hold state, right? Just
Yeah. So yeah, the first or two probably was kind of messy, but eventually you learn, and then when you learn, it feels like so much easier. You know.
yeah, I agree. Once the functional paradigm clicks, you're just like your eyes are opened.
Yeah, and it's really cool that both because you can learn for both. It's not
Hmm.
exclusive. You
Yeah,
are not supposed to use either one or another. You can combine some ideas from one with the other, and that I believe that makes you a better developer if you learn both and you use both.
for sure. And it allows you to run into different situations and problems in, you know, different architectures of a language as well. So like object oriented versus functional, and then like, Beam VM stuff and processes, and it allows you to really see the big picture for what you're solving too.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to learn something new, right? So, and back in the day, I was very much into domain-driven design and DDD. So,
Hmm.
you know, I believe there's a lot to learn from DDD, but in the beginning or back in the day, it was hard for me to kind of, try to model to design projects, especially because I was with the, domain driven design mindset, trying to learn Elixir.
Hmm.
Like I said, in the beginning, it was kind of messy for me, but yeah.
You know what I wish I had when I was first learning Elixir was Jose's his design patterns talk that he just did this last year.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that was like such an amazing talk. And if you guys are listening and haven't watched it, you have to check it out. It is just eye opening. It's pretty amazing.
Yes, 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 yes. I was there watching the talk, and I was with a friend of mine, and I remember like, oh, I wish I had this presentation. I said the exact same thing to my friend. Like, I wish I had that in the beginning, like in
Yeah.
few years ago. That would help a lot.
Yeah, it was well done. And it's like cuz coming from like an object oriented language, you're used to, all your design patterns, like your factory pattern, whatever it may be, right? But it was just so awesome to kind of see how they kind of automatically fall into place where you need them with the Beam VM and Elixir.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember I was like researching some other technologies, some other programming languages, like Clojure and some others, like trying to learn how they apply DDD and other patterns and try to, kind of learn how they apply that and then apply to Elixir because we didn't have much material about Elixir. But that does not work very well as well because in Elixir we have process like we have the OTP that we don't have in other technologies. So it's a kind of a unique environment, I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Beacon CMS it's a cool project. I should have been diving into it the second it was released because I just started diving into the code and I spun up the demo app and I started checking things out early this morning. And it's a really awesome project. And I'm curious what got you involved in this project and what were like the early conversations looking like when you first got involved?
Um, well, it was kind of I would say kind of coincidence maybe. A friend of mine joined Dockyard, right? And he when he joined Dockyard, he was like, "Hey, I'm happy. I'm just joined Dockyard. I'm glad I did it." And I was like, "Okay, if you have the content of the person, like you have, if you can share uh, s- the content of the person," and and then we had like a brief conversation about a job position. Um, but I was working on other projects, so I was like, okay, now it's not the best time, right? So, and then eventually there was this position for Beacon CMS, and that was about 2 years ago. Uh, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So let's talk about this project and see if that works out for both, for me and for Dockyard. And since that I had experience with Elixir, Phoenix, LiveView, I had some contributions to Phoenix, LiveView, and some other projects. And so it was I would say it was a nice match
Hmm.
uh, because I really do believe in open source, and I wanted to do part be in the open source ecosystem. And giving my experience with Phoenix and LiveView and what the project needed, it was a good match, right? So then I joined Dockyard to work on Beacon full time. So I've been working on the Beacon project and some other projects around Beacon, and also on the Dockyard website. The Docker website is running on Beacon like 100% now for for more than a year now. Yes, more than a year now. So I have been working on the Docker website as well. So it was like it just happened. I would say it just happened. It was just the perfect moment. Um, so there's no better explanation. It
No,
just
yeah.
just happened.
No, I love that. What did you have any experience with like other CMS systems, or was this kind of a first for you?
I had in the past. I used to work with WordPress
Okay.
back in the day, like
So you
more
used
than.
them, but you never really created one.
No, I never created one, but I was back in the day. I was working with plugins and customizing WordPress. But that was I'm talking about more than 10 years ago,
Yeah, okay.
right? So it's a while now. So after that, as far as I remember, I had no other experience with CMSs. So, but nowadays there are so many other projects
Yeah.
in the market, like for not even not only CMSs but also visual editors, which is
Hmm.
also a big part of Beacon for us. So nowadays we have kind of two types of projects: CMSs that may or may not have visual editors, and we also have visual editors. We have companies that are focused 100% on visual editors.
Hmm.
So in Beacon we have the all these CMS stuff like the pages and data source, and we are working on the visual editor, right? So the visual editor is more like JavaScript project. It's Svelte project. I I'm not gonna I'm not going to give spoilers. Miguel you'll be on the show talking about
Yeah,
visual
Miguel's on
editor.
is on next Friday, so we get two
Yeah,
weeks in a row of Beacon. It'll be awesome.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So no spoilers on the visual editor, but we do have kind of those, I would say, two big projects into one.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I am like very curious because I've talked about it previously on this podcast that I have like a web hosting platform that I've been building. And the more that I've been adding to it, the more it's been turning into its own like CMS. So it's like pretty much like I'm just, quite a few versions behind Beacon right now. So I have to kind of reevaluate what I'm working on, I think, and maybe contribute to open source instead of my own project. But I really love a lot of your like architectural decisions that you did with Beacon. And do you want to kind of do like a macro overview of like how Beacon is kind of structured internally for like a website? Like let's just talk about maybe like a static homepage for now.
Yeah, so we can get into the technical details, but if you need like a very short introduction, Beacon is essentially compiling the templates at runtime and making them available so you don't need to deploy your sites. It's like creating or writing the Hicks templates at runtime,
Hmm.
right? So that's essentially how Beacon works. And the getting more into the technical details, just the timeline of the project. Mike Beans started the project, and he created the first, I would say, the first prototype. And the design we have now, the code base that we have now is not like the initial prototype, but the idea is the same. The concept is the same. Whenever you make a change on a template or a component, we build a module at runtime and compile that module and just swap the module at runtime, because in Erlang you have, when a module is loaded, you have the new module and the old module. Like you have two versions of the module at runtime, and then we just swap them. We replace the module, and then that module that was compiled, we make it available for for your site. So it's and that's the challenge with Beacon, is bringing all the compile time operations at runtime.
Hmm.
So building modules, compiling and loading, all that stuff that usually happens at compile time in your local environment, we are bringing that into the runtime environment.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you? I'm assuming you're building like a lot of your own like DSLs then and things like that to do that, or how do you handle dynamically rendering like a new live view module?
Yeah, so essentially it's basically meta programming,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So we have all the loading system, and in the loading system, it's essentially, if you go to the Beacon repo and if you go to the loader directory, that's where the magic happens, right? It's where we get the data from the database, like your templates, for example. So if you create an let's say you create a new page, right, and then this page is like slash about something or blog something, the path of your page, and you have the description, title, and you have a template, right? So essentially we store that data into the database, and then we need to fetch all the data and compile a module. So essentially we are building the modules dynamically.
Hmm.
It's a bunch of code expressions. So, and then eventually we have the module and compile the code expression and load that into the runtime environment.
That's awesome. Like what just popped into my head too is with dynamically building templates like that, like localization and things of that nature will be very easy to implement and kind of, create multiple language websites.
Yeah, for example, we don't have built-in localization now, but we do have variants like
Okay.
AB variants, for example. So you can create a new variant for your site, and then in the we call page module. Page module is where we start all the data for that page. We store the compile Higgs template, we store assigns and some other metadata. And in this module, we store all the variants, the main template and the other variants, right? So it's really nice because we can have this abstraction, right? So
Mm.
in Beacon, we have just one live view. It's the page live view. It's a single live view that gets all the requests to your pages. And in this live view, we prox the request to the page module you're requesting. And that's where we have the router, right? We have a dynamic router as well. We have a ETS table with other routes and the page module that serves that route. So a request comes into the into that single live view, then we find a page module for that request, and then we call the render function for you that is compiled. So that's essentially how a request works in Beacon.
Yeah, that's cool. So you have your own router and then you're still using the Phoenix router, I'm assuming, right? And the Phoenix router just kind of holds your magic dynamic route and that's all you have there?
Yeah, we have just a single route in the
Yeah, yeah.
Phoenix, the regular Phoenix route. It's just a catch-all route. So let's say you mount your site at slash blog. So whatever comes after slash blog is 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 um is fetched by the catch-all route, and then Beacon manages all the other other requests that is in the slash blog prefix. And we used ETS table for our routes because the thing is, we need to create new pages, publish new pages, and eventually we'll have the feature to unload pages, so you can delete pages, for example, and have all the redirect from one to another, all that stuff. So we need to be able to dynamically add and remove routes. So that's the reason we have a ETS table.
Yeah,
And
I love
yeah,
that. That's really smart. Do you dynamically update like a sitemap then as well, or what are you doing on that front?
we don't have sitemaps yet in
Okay.
Beacon. We do have in the Docker website, which eventually we are going to extract uh, into Beacon, but we don't have sitemaps yet. But that would be, when we get the sitemaps, it's gonna be, kind of the same idea. We go to the routes table, we get all the published pages, and
Mhm.
then we build the sitemaps. So we
Yeah,
can just
yeah.
reuse the same routes table.
Yeah, you could just generate a sitemap, a static sitemap essentially, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then in this routes table, we parse. We have to match every record. So essentially, we have the same matching that Phoenix router have, but in a ETS table. So because we support dynamic paths,
I'm
right? You
curious, how do you originally like seed the ETS table? How does that work?
So that happens at when the application starts.
Okay.
So when the application starts, there is a supervisor, a main supervisor for Beacon itself, and then we have a supervisor for each site. So the sites are separate, right? So we have like a tree for every site, and and then when this supervisor, the site supervisor starts, we bootstrap all the data we need, like the routes table and some other metadata.
Sorry, is the routes table then, is it stored in the database and you're grabbing it and then putting it in the ETS table because you can just grab it quicker?
Yeah, so we have all the pages. I mean, the source of truth is always the database, right? So
Hmm.
all the pages are in the database. So when the site starts, we need to query the database and find all the published pages, and then we see the routes table. And another reason we use an ETS table is to be able to match the records, because in ETS we have the specific type of query on ETS that we can match the records, and we use that to find to match the request that is coming with the record that is in the ETS table. So that's how we find which page we need to serve the request.
Okay, that's cool. Now, is it multi-tenancy or would you create a new Beacon project for every site? How does that?
No, it's multi-tenancy. We can
Okay.
You can have virtually any amount of sizes. Like,
And you were just saying you basically just spring up a new supervisor then for each site that is created.
yeah, you don't need to Beacon, you take care of that for you. So essentially all you need to do is add a new configuration. So
Okay.
in your application, in your Phoenix LiveView application, you go to the on your supervisor, the application, the children, and then you add Beacon. You add the Beacon supervisor there, and you add the configuration for your sites. So you can have site A, B, and C, and whatever. And then when your application starts, Beacon you take care of, starting the supervisors, the process, all the OTP stuff. You
Okay.
don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
Beacon does that for you.
Nice. Are you routing then for each individual site? Do you just use plug or what do you do at that point?
So essentially, when you need to do essentially you need two steps to get a new site on your application. First is the configuration in the in the children. You need a new child in your application's children. And the other thing is you need to mount your site in your router. So
Okay.
there's a macro beacon site. You need to call that macro in your router, and that is how beacon knows where to where to find the requests for your site. So
Okay.
if you have 100 sites, you're gonna have like 100 configurations and 100 beacon site calls in your router.
Okay. Okay, cool. No, I like that. That's cool. Um, I feel like this is probably jumping off subject a little bit or going on a tangent, but do you handle like SSL certs and things like certbot inside of Beacon or no?
No, that's up to you, because the idea of beacon is supposed to work with your application. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need a new Phoenix application just for beacon,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's a big um, you know big value for us, for beacon. So, for example, we don't have authentication on the admin interface because we don't want to impose a certain type of authentication layer for you. Like, so it's up to you. You may have like a basic authentication. You can have SSO or any other type of authentication.
Mm-hmm.
So Beacon has to work with existing applications and has to be extensible,
Okay.
right? So usually we don't impose that kind of this level of design decisions
Which
for you.
which makes sense, especially since you're an open source project. You have to fit as many use cases as you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting now that people are using Beacon, because we released 0.1 a month ago, and people are using Beacon, and they are like, hey, how do I do this or that with Beacon? And sometimes we don't have that feature, or sometimes we do have, but we don't have the documentation. And that's when I go to the Beacon repo, and then I write a guide or a recipe. Whenever someone asks something, I just go there and you know write a recipe. And it's really interesting to know how people are using Beacon,
Mm-hmm.
and which we have been using Beacon on the Docker website, but that's one use case, right?
Right.
And people can use Beacon in many different ways. For example, I I was at ElixirConf talking to someone that was kind of asking about the admin interface, how the admin interface can manage multiple sites with multiple different tenants. And the thing is, the admin interface works in a cluster, right? So you can you can have either a single application with Beacon and Beacon Live Admin installed in the same application, or you can have multiple Beacon applications running in the cluster and a single admin interface. And this guy at ElixirConf was asking about how to create some silos. For example, one admin interface can manage 5 different sites. Another admin interface can manage the other sites in the same cluster. And that's something it is possible. It needs some small changes to make it work, but the overall idea, you know, the overall architecture that we have supports that. And but it's something that we have never thought about before,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's really awesome to learn how people are trying to use Beacon and trying to apply Beacon into their existing projects. And we are also learning how people are trying to um, you know, how to get Beacon working with existing applications. For example, how they are able to share the same style sheets, the same JavaScript files, kind of have a tight integration between Beacon and the Phoenix application,
Hmm.
which is something we are, um, it's on the roadmap. So we are researching ways to make it work better for our users.
Hmm.
But we are now in the phase that we are learning, how people are using Beacon, and we are really, learning and having. We do have a roadmap now, so we are, you know, having the, you know, all these learnings and issues and feature requests. So you'll be focused on making it work
Hmm.
for those people that are using Beacon now.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm actually excited to dive more into it because like from my perspective, what I've been building is basically website hosting, right? Really easy to store, like get up static home pages for people. But then we've been slowly integrating features like blog posts, Discord events, podcast pages. And I just recently got a client for doing e-commerce. And so I'm like trying to tie in, like, I want to build an e commerce system that can be styled to a brand, but reusable across my whole platform. So
Hmm.
kind of the same thing you're kind of talking about right now as well. Um, so yeah, I don't I'm excited to dive in, and this will be maybe a good excuse to get my toes into a open source project.
Yeah, I mean, every contribution is amazing. Like,
Hmm.
even like documentation, code, or just helping spread the word. It's any contribution is really welcome. And you talk about e-commerce, like, and that rings a bell about plugins, because one thing that people are asking about is plugins.
Hmm.
Every CMS has plugins, and that's something we are researching ways to implement, because we could, for example, have hex packages, just implement behavior and protocols to extend the, implement hooks and that kind of stuff. That's easy, I would say. But the problem is, the idea of Beacon is to allow the, all the operations to be done at runtime.
Hmm.
So now we have this situation that we want to. The perfect solution would be to allow plugins to be enabled at runtime. Like in WordPress, you go to a directory and search for a plugin and just enable it,
Hmm.
right? But that's not very easy. That's not very straightforward in Elixir, right? So that's the kind of challenge that we have.
Yeah.
We could have a simple solution, but it's not the best experience. Or we can, do more research and do, try different things and see if you can have a better experience, right? But plugins, it's coming. Eventually, it's coming,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you're gonna have ways to extend Beacon further.
Yeah,
For example,
plugins would be huge. That'd be amazing. That
yeah, we just need to figure out how to make it work in a way that the experience is great.
right. Yep.
It's not just make it work. It has to work, and the experience has to be good.
Oh, for sure. And it's not easy. I'm just trying to think about, like, I don't even know how to even approach plugins. But yeah, that'll be cool. I think this is a really exciting, promising um open source project. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. We didn't talk about the why Beacon exists, but you know there is this gap in the community. We don't have, because you can have your Phoenix project, right? You have your Phoenix project, your LiveView project, and that is your application, right? Your let's say, your private application.
Hmm.
And of course, you can have public sites, you can have public pages, like your marketing page, your landing page, that kind of stuff, in Phoenix and LiveView. But we, we we want to have something that content creators can manage, and that's the gap we are, trying to solve here.
Hmm.
So, and on the other hand, on the other side of the project, we you can also have native applications. So that's how you can see where Beacon and LiveView Native converge together into a single application. We fill all the gaps of a application, and
Yeah.
then eventually we are gonna have open and other, projects, and then we have like a full application with
Yeah.
public pages, native apps, and all the other parts of the application.
Yeah. Well, what's awesome too with like the site builder that's coming that Miguel's working on is that like the easier it is to use, the adoption rate of Elixir and Phoenix is going to skyrocket. Like just because you have an awesome product, not even necessarily the technology it's built on, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing with CMS. CMS, they tend to attract either junior developers sometimes, or even people that are, experienced but they don't use Elixir.
Mm-hmm.
That happens with CMSs. They attract people from other communities, and if we can do that, that would be amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because we can actually help increase the adoption of
Yeah. Yeah.
Elixir itself, right? And the visual editor is not only for content creators; it can be for developers as well, right? You can. The idea is you should be able to create a new page, like just using the visual controls. Like you can just drag and drop components, and then you have a new page,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I love stuff like that as long as it works well, right? Because I would never consider myself a front end developer. I hack my way through front end dev, but I can do it. Do I enjoy it? Not really.
Well, me neither. Like I'm not a front end developer, so I I can relate. But yeah, but even if you are a developer, even if you are a front end developer, like let's say you want to change just, just the order of some cards in your page.
Hmm.
In using the visual editor, it's just a matter of drag and dropping the component and save and publish the changes, right? You don't need.
I love the like just deploy like just publishing versus having to deploy a project like that. That's pretty amazing. Just
and
live rendering.
and it's not only the deploy process. Think about all the, the whole process, like opening a new branch, a new PR, requesting review, and there might be a review process. And some companies, they do not allow deployments during the day, or they have a
Hmm.
specific day in the week for deployments, that kind of stuff. Some other companies have a staging environment.
Friday evening, right?
Yeah, the
That's when you
best
deploy new features.
the best day. So it's not only about making the change and deploying, it's about the whole process. You can, sometimes you may have like a week to make a change, a really small change on your
Hmm.
website. You can cut that off to 5 minutes.
Right. Well, it allows you to publish changes safely. Like you're not doing a full deploy, right? You're just tweaking a
Yeah,
Heeks template essentially.
yeah, it's not a full deploy. You are
Yeah.
essentially just recompile one module.
Yeah.
If you have, let's say you have 1,000 pages, the Docker website has about 1,000 pages now, because every blog post is a module, is a page
Hmm.
module, right? And you are only changing that single specific module, not the others,
Yeah.
right? So, and we are about to release 0.2, maybe, most likely today. Actually, we are
Oh,
about
that's
to.
exciting.
Yeah, the 0.2 version has an improved loader. We are using, uh, Erlang has this notion of error handler, Like
Mhm.
if you are from Ruby, it's like a method missing. Like when Erlang tries to, that's how outload works. When you call a module in a function and that's not loaded, Erlang is gonna call the error handler and load that module for you, right? That's how outload works, and that's how the Elixir compiler works as well. It does implement the error handler, so when there's a call to a module or a function and it's not loaded, it's gonna compile and load that for you. And Beacon does the same. Now with the 0.2 version, we do have our error handler, which means when you start your site, none of the pages are loaded, like 0 pages are loaded. And when there's a request for, let's say, for the home page, that home page is not loaded. So the error handler kicks in, and then it finds that that page depends on a layout, and the layout depends on the live data. Live data is our data source for Beacon, and then it depends also on the components module. So it compiles all the dependencies and make the page available for you, right? And then when you request another page, and that page depends on the same components module, on the same layout, it's gonna it's gonna just check that module is loaded, and then just skip that one because it does need to load again, and just load the module that you are requesting.
Mhm.
And the same is true when you publish a new page. It's funny because when we publish a new page now with the 0.2 version, we are not actually publishing the page. We are actually unloading the page. Because when there's a request for that page, the outload kicks in, the error handler kicks in and load that for you on demand, on the fly.
Okay.
So that's the 0.2, one of the biggest change on 0.2. And another big change on 0.2 is the igniter tasks.
Okay.
We have been working with Zach from Ash, and now installing Beacon in the project, it's going to be a single command. Either a new project or a existing project, one single command, and then you get Beacon working.
I'm curious, for integrating into an existing project, what's that process look like if you like, let's just pretend it's like a basic live view app. Let's pretend it's like Elixir Mentor, but hosted in its own thing. So I have a homepage, a blog, some of those things. How difficult is it to integrate Beacon?
Well, with the 0.2 version, you just need to install the Igniter archive, and then you're gonna and then you add the sorry, you just need to add the Igniter library into your project, and then you're gonna have access to the Igniter tasks. Like Ignite is gonna be like mix beacon.install,
Okay.
and then mix beacon.gen.site. And then you pass the parameters like the site name, the path, and some others.
Okay.
And then it's going to generate the sites for you. And the Igniter project, it's going to display a diff of the changes. So you can review the changes, and then you just accept the changes, and you're going to have the files, everything is done for you.
Wow. Okay. So with Igniter, does it kind of does it go through my existing project and it knows what to move into the database for templates and things, or not? Would
Uh,
that be a little more manual?
No, it's going to create for the database side of things. It's going to create a migration for you,
Okay.
and that migration is going to create all the tables for you, and then you need to create the pages manually.
Okay.
But we are um, we are researching ways to make the local environment, the experience of the local environment easier for you. Like we are researching ways to have like a CLI using Igniter probably. And in this CLI, you're gonna have a local environment where you can, for example, create your files, you can create everything locally, and then eventually when we are done, you can just connect to your live site and just issue a command and update your live site, from your local environment to your live production site. So let's say, for example, you want to create a new component, right? You have a site, it's running, it's working, and then you want to create a new component. Let's say you can bootstrap that component. The idea is that you should be able to bootstrap your component locally, work on that component, like using your local environment, your own editor, that kind of stuff. And then when we are done, you can just, beacon whatever command and then push to your production website, like live. So you don't need to redeploy the whole thing again. But this CLI is not done. It's just on the research phase yet. We are not sure if we're gonna. I cannot tell. I cannot say if that's gonna work or not. Maybe it works, maybe not. That's the thing with our R&D project. Sometimes, sometimes it works, sometimes not. But the idea is to have an improved local environment so you can work with your files. But now, currently, you can install Beacon into your project, and it's going to bootstrap the tables for you. It's going to create a migration for you. And then you can go to the admin interface. The admin interface is a LiveView application. It's a separate repo. Like we have two repos, one for Beacon, another one for the admin interface. And then you can go to like localhost 4000/admin, and then you can create your components and layouts and pages there, right?
Very cool.
Yeah, and we do have a code editor in the admin interface and the visual editor as well for pages. Eventually, we are going to enable the visual editor for components as well and layouts. So
The visual editor is the drag and drop.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So we are going to enable the visual editor for components eventually. So you can like, hey, I want to see how this component looks like, and I want to make changes to this component visually. And then you make the changes, save, and it applies the changes to all pages.
So I can write a component uh, in Elixir or HTML or Heeks, and then also see what the component looks like in a preview or in the builder too. In the
Not yet.
but
Yeah.
eventually. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
I hit my mic.
Yeah. Eventually, that's the idea.
That'll be
Right
really
now,
cool.
yeah. Right now, we have the visual editor enabled for pages, only
Okay.
pages.
Okay.
But eventually, we are going to enable for layouts and components as well. Most
Wow.
likely components first because it has more value, right? So eventually, that's the idea. And if the local environment with the CLI works out, you can also build your component locally. Like
Okay.
like you have the core components in Phoenix, right? It's just a module. You can like create your component and then push to your live site. But we don't have that yet. It's on research phase now. So that's the idea, right?
Nice.
So you could, so if all that works out, you can either use the admin interface with the visual editor or your local environment.
Okay.
That's
I
the
the,
that's the
the
idea.
This is going to be one of the coolest projects ever. I don't know if it's just because I've been like in this space building stuff like this, but I think it's a pretty big deal for Elixir and like just in adoption alone.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I heard about Beacon, to be honest, I was like, I don't know. It's kind of a boring project because CMS. Like
Yeah.
when you hear about CMS, your first reaction,
Everyone builds a CMS, right?
yeah, usually your first reaction, yeah, nah, that's boring. But the thing is, we have Phoenix, we have LiveView, we have all the distribution in OTP, which allows us to have a like very different kind of CMS, like a modern CMS, and that makes Beacon different and way more exciting.
Yeah, the way you set up the admin too, where you can just connect to different nodes and multiple nodes, I think is really amazing. That's smart.
Yeah, because that's for not only for performance but for security as well. For example, you can have your admin interface behind a VPN, right? And
Hmm.
you can isolate the admin interface. You can just deploy one node behind, a secured node in your infrastructure, and all the other nodes have Beacon running,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they expose the port so you can access that application. But the admin interface, you need to connect to a VPN, for example.
Okay.
You are not required to do that, but if you need to, it's up to you.
Yeah, yeah. We have a couple questions that I don't want to ignore our audience. We have Mike Shell. He said, "How do you choose what features to build into the CMS? I've been in the CMS space for a decade, and I know you can never be done chasing features that people want. Is there a North Star or vision for the CMS overall?" I think you kind of touched on this with like the idea of plugins, because then you kind of can wash your hands of things.
Yeah, but I guess this question is true for every project, right?
Hmm.
Maybe even more for open source projects, because everyone can use and propose features. And I would say the short answer is it's based on demand, right? People,
Oh,
if there are, and that's something that when I did some contributions to Elixir Phoenix LiveView, that's something I learned with Jose. Uh, if there's no need to do something, don't do it,
yeah, yeah.
right? If there are more than one person asking about that feature, well, that means there's something there. There is a demand for that feature, right? And in this phase that we are now, that people are starting to use Beacon, that's even more um, clear, because there are a lot of people like asking about features, and
Hmm.
so we know which features are more requested.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's probably a huge benefit to being open source. You have a lot more eyes on you and you get feedback almost instantly.
Yeah, the feedback. I mean, our community is growing, and that's amazing. Like having more people trying Beacon, and even reporting bugs, or asking for features, or whatever interaction you do is amazing. That's how we know, we learn where we need to go, right?
Yeah,
So, but of course we have limited resources, right?
of course.
i'm
Yeah.
i am the only one working full-time on Beacon now. I mean, since since the beginning of the project. I
Did
mean,
you
since
say it's been 2 years or not quite?
I joined Dockyard. So I joined Dockyard at the end of in December, so about 2 years now, December of the other year. So, but there has been other people working on Beacon as well, because Dockyarders have their the Friday free to work on other projects. So
Nice.
some people help, and for example, we have Miguel working on the visual editor. It's like a JavaScript application. He's working on that application. We have Andrew. Andrew is listed as the other maintainer of the project as well. Even though he does not work full time on Beacon, he's a huge help on the project, and he has been. We have been working together on Beacon for some time now. So he's the either me or Andrew knows more about the internals of Beacon, and can help the community.
Awesome.
So I'm not working alone on Beacon.
Yeah,
Even though
yeah.
I'm working full time, there are other people, and eventually there are some other people contributing, like either from Dockyard or from externally.
Yeah, that's great. We have another question, and I'm going to butcher your name, so I apologize. But Shahir, he asked, "Does Beacon allow me to add my own LiveView components library and access it from the editor?"
Yes. So but not automatically. Like there is no way for you, for example, to just install your package and it's gonna work. Like right now, you go to the admin interface and then you can create components. So you can create a really function component. You can define the attributes, the default values, which attributes are required, the template. You can also define Elixir code that runs in your function component. So
Okay.
you can define a full Phoenix component, function
Okay, cool. But
component.
you have to build it through the admin
Yeah,
right now.
because
Okay.
there we need to start that data into the database,
That makes
right?
sense. Yeah. You can't
So
just put it randomly somewhere in the project and have access to it.
yeah, but that's where the CLI would help,
Mm,
right? And the CLI and the plugin system, they eventually, if you can make it work, they are gonna converge so you can create a new plugin and just have let's say you have a plugin, then you can install your library, and then you can have some functions there. You can load your component module into Beacon kind of automatically. That's so you can parse your components that
yeah.
you have on your component library. That's the goal. But again, that's the challenge with Beacon. We have these, we have all that stuff in the compile time that we need to bring into runtime. That's the
Hmm.
challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, how do you handle like assets, like images, videos, all of that? Are you going to use do you use like third party like S3 buckets, or are you putting it straight on a database?
Yeah, so by default, we use a database, which for most scenarios is not the best, the best option, but we need to have a default, right?
Right.
So again, we do not impose like you have to use S3 or whatever. The only requirement for Beacon is that you have to use Postgres,
Okay.
and that's gonna be expanded to other databases. So the only requirement is that you have to have a database, right? So that's the only requirement.
Okay.
And right now it's Postgres, but eventually you're gonna have other vendors. We're gonna support other vendors, and there's someone that actually opened an issue. He's exploring how to run Beacon using SQLite. So that's again, community is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really really great to have like a growing community. But to answer the question, when we have the media library, so if you go to the admin interface, there is a media library. You can upload assets, and then you can like upload images, videos, and some other file types. And we store those in the database.
Okay.
But yeah, but you can extend Beacon. Right? The idea is that Beacon is extensible, and then
So
you can
I could make my upload service take things to Mux for video and then like a CDN for images or whatever I need.
yeah. So we have this idea of life cycles in Beacon. So for example, you can add new providers. So for the, let's say, I don't recall now the name, but let's say for the upload asset life cycle, you can add a new function there that is gonna upload the file somewhere else
Awesome.
instead of the database.
Am I just kind of overriding a behavior at that point, or how's that working?
It's a uh, it's gonna append. It's gonna add new
Okay.
functions into the life cycle. We don't for now. We don't remove life cycle. You can just
Okay.
add new function into the life
Nice.
cycle. But
Okay. No, I like that. That's cool.
so even the render is a life cycle, is exposed.
Okay.
Like if on the configuration of your site there's gonna be like a life cycle key in the configuration, and there you can see the life cycles that you have on your site. So the Markdown and Higgs render, both of them, they are built in, but they are exposed as life cycles. So you can you can actually add new template engines, for example, if you want. So the idea is that we expose those life cycles as much as possible, and we can, you know, we should allow plugins to include more life cycles to make those changes, right? It's kind of I'm not gonna say like WordPress, but WordPress has these has filters and life cycles as well. So the idea is that you can inject your own logic, your own code into specific parts of the of Beacon.
Hmm. I think this is the coolest project ever. For people like me and listeners, what is the best way for us to start contributing and like helping? Like, is there an issue board that we can just go kind of grab tasks, or how do you want to manage that, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, so the entire project is open source, not only the code base, but the project as well. So
Hmm.
all the work, all the discussions is in GitHub, all the issues. And
Perfect.
so we try to keep all the issues organized. So you're gonna see some labels. So if you're really new to the project, you can look for the good first issue label. Those are gonna be the issues that are easier to get started with.
Hmm.
But any contribution is welcome, right? If you wanna contribute with code and you are new, I would say the good first issue is the best one, but you can pick any issue. Like there's no like you can work on whatever you want. And we do have roadmap. So this roadmap is the list of features and all the tests that we are going to be focused next. And so the roadmap also helps to like drill down the issues we are focused. But if you want to contribute, either you know with code or documentation is also helpful, or just trying out the project and reporting bugs or reporting or just feature requests, for example, also helps. um, and I try to be as more responsive as possible, to answer all questions, all issues. And we also have Elixir Slack channel. There's the Elixir Slack. There's a Beacon CMS channel. You
Okay.
can you can find us there. Either me or Andrew or Brian. We can ask questions. So if you have a bug or a problem, you can ask there, and we help.
Okay. Amazing. Cool. Yeah, I'm excited for the future of Beacon. I think it's already awesome, and just looking at your roadmap and seeing where you're heading, I think it's going to be an awesome project.
Yeah, sure. Like personally, I believe the plugin system is gonna be like the um unblocker for
I
new
agree.
features.
Plugins will be really cool.
Yeah. So because we can, I mean, we do have a lot of features that we want to build, right? But we do have limited resources.
Hmm.
And with plugins, we can enable other people to contribute, and they don't need to contribute to the Beacon core, right? They can just write their own plugins, and that's a huge contribution. That's going to be a huge contribution for the whole community.
How do you see plugins working? Like, do you see kind of like a marketplace of Beacon plugins, or how do you see that working? Do you have
Event,
any idea?
yeah, eventually yes, but that's more like a business decision,
Gotcha.
more than technical one,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
it's it makes sense to have a marketplace. That's kind of the usual way to handle plugins.
Yeah.
You know every platform has a marketplace, so it makes sense, but it's more like a business decision.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of clients that uh, are abandoning or hope to abandon like Shopify because there's just limitations and things they don't like, and that's why I'm building out a e-commerce piece right now, is because actually I have two clients that are not happy with Shopify.
Yeah.
So like there's a big space here, and I think Phoenix is it's a good use case for it.
Yeah, and it's and again, it's about adoption, right? Because
Hmm.
you may have clients in Shopify, WordPress, and other CMSs and platforms, and we can bring those clients and into Elixir and Phoenix,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's a big deal for Beacon.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and you talk about Shopify. That's something that brings about another topic. Like, people ask about the security, because Shopify, we have the liquid template in Gin that is safe, and people ask about, hey, what about Beacon? Because Hicks, you can execute the Elixir code, right?
Hmm.
Well, we do have ways to solve this problem, or to at least mitigate this problem, right? One is, if you have admin interface that you manage, you can like review all the changes. You are kind of safe if you don't allow external contributions, for example, right? You can just use Hicks template.
Hmm.
Another option is, we do have a package. Mike Beans created this package. It's called Safe Code. It's it's a whitelist parser. Essentially, it's gonna parse the whole template, and it's gonna block the changes if there is a call to a function, like a system command function or whatever. And if you want to allow that function call, you just add into the configuration. Like, in my side, I'm going to allow this call to this function or this module,
Gotcha.
right? We do have this option as well. Other options are, you can use Markdown, right? And Markdown, you can you can have a really nice, you can build pages using Markdown, right? So
Hmm.
that's another option.
Which is
And
good for static pages, I would feel like, but you might run into more issues if you want like a live view or something dynamic, right?
yeah, so um, I'm working on allowing. I'm working on another library. It's called MDX. It's Markdown. It's a common mark compliant Markdown for Elixir. It supports all GitHub features and
Okay.
extensions and AST parsing manipulation. And I we can actually have Elixir code and Phoenix components inside Markdown. So I'm working on that now. I'm working on this idea of enable live view inside Markdown. So again, if you are okay with having Elixir and Elixir code into your pages, you can also use Markdown with you're gonna be able to use Markdown with live components. That's not possible now, but I'm working on that. I do have a prototype that works. And another option as well is, you can have a custom template in Gin. So if you want to have like liquid, and that's special, that's really cool, because if you're migrating from Shopify to Beacon, for example, and you do have liquid templates, or your customer is more comfortable with liquid templates, you can also render those in Beacon and keep using LiveView. The whole Beacon system works with LiveView, but your template can be a liquid template. So you can have custom template in Guinness as well.
That's awesome. Shahir, sorry if I'm butchering your name still. He said he effectively used your MDX Phoenix component in his blog post, and he even wrote an article about it and then shared the link. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of the first prototype of this idea. There are some improvements to be made, but I would say it works. It works. Essentially, you can have Elixir code, and we can just parse that.
That's cool. That's awesome.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm excited about this project.
yeah, I mean, just to be clear, it's not possible now to use
Hmm.
Elixir into like markdown files,
Right.
markdown pages, but eventually that's something we are work on. So we want to improve the experience of writing pages. Because now if you go to the admin interface and create a new markdown page, you have to write the markdown manually, which for us, for developers, that works well because we know markdown. But content creators, they don't really, sometimes they don't really understand markdown, right? So we are working to have a nice experience even for markdown, like probably like a block editor,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah.
can, right, which is kind of useful for other platforms as well. So that's another improvements we are gonna work eventually. um, just because we are really focused on improving the experience now, and
Yeah.
and working, we are focused on the adoption now and having a better experience for users.
Yeah. So everyone listening, go check out the GitHub link. I believe I put it in the description. If I haven't, I'll make sure I add it afterwards. But it's definitely worth checking out. I'm excited to dive deeper in it today because that's going to be my afternoon is playing with Beacon.
That's nice.
Yeah, and I'll see if I can figure things out. I might have to re-download Slack. I've been an anti-Slack person, and I just use Discord, but it'd be cool to jump in on the Elixir channels.
Yeah, I mean, I use both, but I'm always there in the Elixir Slack, so you can send a message pretty much any time of the day. And we can help, like we can help with bugs, we can help with discussing new features, and it's really nice to talk to other people and
Yeah,
learn how they're trying to use Beacon.
yeah. I'm kind of excited to kind of maybe try to intermix it with my approach because I have a lot of like template generators that I created. So I'm creating a lot of static files, but I really love how everything's on a database for you versus creating, static directories and things. And then now I have all these things in my head about how to clean up my
I,
architecture in my own project.
I think you wrote a blog post about the generators, right?
I did like a very short like video of how it was working and functioning.
Because I do remember something about those generators, if I'm not mistaken. Like I
Yeah.
was.
But like, yeah, we've been making, we have like a handful of templates and we can basically just pass in form data. So we can collect it from, it's just like JSON or a map, right? And we can pretty much generate an entire website pretty quickly with like all the branding and everything required. But yeah,
Yeah, I think I saw that. I was just mistaken about if it was a blog post or something else, but I think I saw that. It's
yeah.
really nice. Yeah,
But
yeah.
like this is the importance. So I have a lot of like new developers, or at least new to Elixir developers that follow me, and just me browsing through your code base has given me like so many better ideas for architecting, and you gain so much knowledge when you see other people and talk to other people about their projects. So I highly recommend doing that. And if you're new and a junior dev and you're scared to participate in like open source projects, a great way, like you were saying, is jump on documentation and write documentation because projects always usually lack on the documentation side. It's hard to keep up on.
That's very true. I gave a presentation at Elixir Conf 2020, 2021. I guess I don't remember now, but it was an online edition, and this talk was about open source. Um, and in this talk, I had this idea of like the hello world of open source is documentation. You can start with documentation, and it's people don't realize how useful the contributions are
Hmm.
on the documentation side, because when you are writing the documentation, you have a vision about that feature or about that function or whatever, but that vision is not the same as other people, because
Exactly. Yep.
because you know the project, you're working on the project every day, so it's not the same as other people. So writing documentation is really hard, to be honest, and any contribution to documentation is really super useful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you don't have to feel like you're not contributing because it's a huge help. Because, yeah, a lot of times too, it's hard to write detailed, good documentation, especially when you wrote it, because you might skip a few steps and not realize you're not being as detailed as you should for a new adopter.
Yeah, yeah. And I was on this 0.2 version, I was happy to actually remove some of the documentation because now that we have the igniter task, I was like, I can either keep the documentation, the written documentation, or I can just have the tasks, and I was like, I don't know, it may not be the best approach. I'm trying that, but the idea is for whatever the generator is doing, there's not much documentation about that. I mean, there's documentation about the generator, what the
Hmm.
outcome is, that kind of stuff, or why the generator exists, and the parameters and so on, but not the actual um, actions of the generator. Like, I don't need to have a documentation asking you to create a migration because the generator does that for you.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of using Igniter as a documentation tool
Dude,
as well.
Zach has crushed it with Igniter. I feel like it's just blowing up right now. Everyone's using it.
Yeah, it's a really cool project. It's
It is,
really needed as well.
for sure.
In my opinion, we I mean, we need that kind of documentation. It's like there's not much justification. Like, we just need that.
Yep, for sure. We have a Big Snacks said, "Hey Leandro, saw your most recent talk at ElixirConf. Beacon looks awesome."
Thank you, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Elixir Conf talks are a way to to talk about Beacon and try to expose how Beacon works, and trying to, yeah, usually trying to explain how Beacon works. And actually, we are starting a new series of blog posts in the Dockyard blog. It's building Beacon series,
Oh, awesome.
and the first one is gonna be talking about the configuration, like how we use the Elixir registry to to store the configuration, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. The idea is to have like short blog posts
Yeah.
explaining something, how Beacon works internally. Because the thing is, we are doing some stuff in Beacon that is not very usual, right? Some stuff that you don't see in other projects.
Right.
Some right, and the idea is to expose how we, to like
Well,
expose how we are doing it.
dynamically rendering templates and dynamically routing, like that's not a typical web project.
No, no, it's not. It's not. Some people try to contribute. I mean, some people are, when they are starting with contributions to Beacon. Usually, I say that, hey, it's a Phoenix project, but it's not a regular Phoenix project. So don't look at Beacon like if you're contributing to Beacon, don't look at Beacon as if regular Phoenix application. And
Right.
the admin interface is the same. The admin interface is more like live dashboard. than a regular Phoenix application,
Hmm.
right? So there's a lot to talk about, the design decisions, the implementation, and so these blog posts, these series of blog posts, the idea is to just talk about those implementations.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I love that. When can we expect those to start dropping?
I think the next it's gonna be next week, the first one.
Okay, cool.
um I'm I won't promise like a frequency, but I'm trying to have at least one per month.
Okay. It's hard to
um
promise content releases, that's for sure.
I mean,
The quickest way to burn yourself out is overpromise content.
yeah. And sometimes I promise features like, hey, I'm gonna work on this feature and it'll be released soon, and then I have to work on also some other stuff, and I feel bad because there's someone waiting for either a content or a feature or a bug fix or whatever, and I
Yeah.
have to work on something else. That happens sometimes, and so I'm kind of avoiding promises now. Like, I'm gonna work on that. I don't know when, but I will.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I get it. I get it. I'm trying to be better about not overpromising my time, because when you work on projects and you also want to create content and help people, it's a hard balance.
yeah, exactly. Because adoption is not on code. Like, I could be here the whole day just coding
Yeah.
and
Yep.
forget about everything else. But that's on how it works. That's not how it works, right?
Yeah,
We
unfortunately, we prefer to build and code all day, but that doesn't get a product used or out there, right?
Yeah, but I do like talking to people, like especially on our Slack channel. That's
Hmm.
that's interesting, and it's. I was talking to Zach about that. I I when I was at Elixir Conf, I was talking to Zach about open source, maintenance, how to handle all the requests and all the users and development, all that stuff, because the Ash framework has a much larger community now,
Hmm.
and Zach is maintaining a bunch of projects, and he said something that was really interesting to me, like the priority number one are the users, is the community. If someone sends a message, either a feature request or a bug report or whatever, just drop everything we're doing and answer that person. Like, it can be like, hey, I have no idea what's happening, I'm gonna take a look on that later. It could be a reply like that, or the actual solution to that problem if you can
Yeah.
solve that. So being responsive is important, and that's something we learned from Jose as well. Like,
Yeah, I will say, like, I was using Ash for a project and I had issue. I couldn't figure out something with the multi-tenancy, like their context, your own database schemas or prefixes, whatever you would call that. And Zach responded so quick with a solution, and then everything worked. So, like,
yeah,
he definitely lives by that, and it's pretty awesome.
yeah, and that's the same with Jose. Like, and that's what Zach told me. Like, we can learn from example. Like, Jose does that on the
Hmm.
community. If you have ever contributed to like Elixir or Phoenix or any other project, usually Jose replies in like 5 minutes. Like,
Yeah, that's
it's
amazing. He's
yeah, it's
everywhere too. He's on every platform. He's on Reddit. He's on Twitter. He's in the
yeah,
forums.
it's unbelievable.
I don't know how he does it.
I have no idea either. Like, but it's really cool because like you are working on something, and then you have a reply to help you keep moving forward, and that's how and that's how you build your community.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's one of the tasks, let's say, of maintaining a project, and and that's really really nice to to see the community growing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's probably awesome to watch Beacon get adopted by others as well.
yeah, we do. Um, I cannot share the others, but we do have other sites in development, um,
Okay.
in using Beacon. So it's really nice to see people, especially because some people started using Beacon before 0.1,
Mm-hmm.
which is like we were making a lot of breaking changes, and people were using Beacon, and now more people are starting to use Beacon with the 0.1 version, and today we're going to have 0.2, and we are avoiding breaking changes and trying to be more um to be more
Mindful.
yeah, because to be breaking changes sometimes are required. There's
Well,
no
especially at
way.
the beginning, like I feel like you always think you have the right like data architecture and everything set up, and then you're like, this isn't working, and you sometimes you just are forced to break things.
Yeah, sometimes it's needed,
Yeah,
but no one likes breaking changes, right?
right.
So we have to avoid breaking changes as much as possible, but that's where Igniter can help as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the uh, requests. I was talking to Zach, like having a upgrade scripts or something, so people can from let's say we have a breaking change from 0.3 to 0.4, we can write a igniter task so people can just execute that and fix the breaking changes if possible. So yeah, there are many ways to improve the experience. We we have been focused on the experience, and the admin interface is another area we need to improve. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the experience is, in my opinion, is not the best, and so we need to improve how the admin interface looks, and how you use the admin interface. That's something we are starting to work on that as well.
The admin interfaces are always ignored until last, aren't they?
I mean, I started the admin interface. I mean, uh, if you get back to day one, like Mike started the admin, but it was like just the default Phoenix generator pages, like, and then I moved to a isolate application, and then I kind of start from scratch. But I'm not a front end designer. Right? I'm not a
Yeah.
front end developer, right? So we had some help along the way. Some UX developers help from Docker help to make it look better. But we still need to do like full work on the admin interface to make it look better and more useful, more you can use it,
Yeah.
but we need to make it look better.
Yeah. Well, Leandro, I appreciate you working on this project. I think it's awesome. And I like Brian and Dockyard are just amazing staples in the Elixir community. He's just all the projects that he's behind. It's awesome. So I appreciate you guys, and I'm excited to dive into this today.
Yeah, I mean it's a big deal because the entire project is open source. So
Hmm.
for Docker is a huge investment,
Yeah, it is.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so the idea is to fill that gap in the community, and being open source is important to reach that goal. And yeah, and this project would not be possible without the investment.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So thank you, Dockyard, for funding this project because it's amazing. Um, where should people find you if they want to follow you? I think I linked your X profile in the description, but probably Dockyard blog. Do you write blogs there?
I have just one blog post there by
Okay.
now, but with the building Beacon series, I should have more in the future. So we can find my blog post there, and we can find me on Twitter. It's maybe we can have a link because it's Leandro Seskin. It's really hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a link on my Hex profile. I think there's a link
Okay,
there.
perfect. So I'll make sure that your X profile is linked in the description, and definitely give Leandro a follow. He's doing cool stuff. And thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to talk about Beacon and all that stuff. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, and next week we have Miguel, who you work pretty closely with, and he's the one that's behind the visual editor, right? The drag and drop interface.
Yeah. So like I said, the visual editor is a big project inside Beacon, and so the visual editor, it's also really, really interesting. I'll be listening for sure.
Yeah, it's impressive. I was looking at your demo where you demoed it, and I'm sure it's come even farther along since your talk in 2023, but it looks really amazing.
Yeah, we have plenty of new features now, and well, I'm not giving spoilers, so
yeah, no spoilers. Everyone's got to wait a week.
Yeah, next week.
Well, everyone, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you so much for joining me today, Leandro. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
All right, see you guys. Hi, I'm Jacob. My YouTube channel and podcast reach thousands of engaged Elixir developers every month. If you're looking to promote your developer tools, services, or job opportunities to a focused audience of Elixir professionals, head to elixirmentor.com and let's discuss sponsorship options.